So what do we know? Well, what we know statistically, and I'm not going to belabor this, is the vast majority of Americans that are single want to be married. Some of the most rigorous, reliable studies around today of young people in America put it in the high 90%, said they want to be married, right? And statistically, although less are getting married and we're getting married later, the majority still will get married. The majority of Americans do. And yet, this generation is taking longer to get married than any generation in recorded human history. You go, why is that? Well, there's a lot of different reasons why for that. For some, it's the fear of divorce. I don't want to mess up marriage. I've seen it done poorly, and I'm scared of doing that myself. Others, it's not the fear of messing up marriage, it's the fear of marriage messing up them. I've got some career goals, I got some things I'm trying to accomplish, and I don't want someone to derail that. For other people, it's confusion about communication. I don't know what the rules are anymore. How do we interact with one another? The advent of the iPhone has changed the way we've talked to each other. An increase in screen time has increased self-reported awkwardness among us. And all the studies we're watching of young people now see a drastic decrease in time socializing and hanging out with friends. And even when we are together, not sure how to talk to each other. I was in line buying a smoothie at the airport yesterday, listening to these girls behind me talk. One of them was an older lady talking about going on this retreat and going with all these couples and singles and on this big event. And her friend was like, did you meet somebody? And she said, no, nobody talks to each other. So I was just on my phone the whole time. And I'm like, that's the world today. That's so much of the world. And less time hanging out with people means less connections, means less dates, which means less marriage. And so that's impacting all that. The increase of pornography has done that as well. Many studies are showing now that prolonged exposure to pornography leads to cynical views about love, affection, and marriage, if it's even possible. And it increases self-reported awkwardness, particularly in young men as they relate to people of the opposite sex. So there's a lot of things that are making this challenging, and it's not put a lot of us in a great place. And what bothers me, and the reason why I talk about dating a lot lately, it's not because I want to be the dating guy. That was never like an ambition of mine, like check, did it. But I just love people, and I'm watching people today struggle, and it is not an easy thing. And so we got to figure out how to navigate this well. So some of you go, well then Ben, when are you advocating? That we should all get rid of our phones, get rid of all our screens, just move out into the country somewhere, sew our own dresses, churn butter, and have plenty of time to talk to each other. No, I'm not talking about there was some ideal day back in the day. There's not. And yet here's the reality. In the uncertain seas of relationships, there are fixed stars we can navigate by. And Steve Callahan was lost at sea 76 days in a little rubber life raft. And he was starving to death out there, but he took some pencils, lashed them together, made a sextant, which is a nautical tool you can use to find your bearings based on the distance between the sun and the horizon. And his understanding of these fixed realities about the universe helped him paddle into the right current and then float gently into an island where he could survive. And for us, wherever you are in the tumultuous seas of relationships, there are fixed realities in the universe about who God is, how he made the world, how we're supposed to treat one another, that if you can understand those, you can navigate the seas no matter how they change. And so that's what we need to figure out today. How do we do it? And last week, we talked about in singleness. Singleness is a gift God gives everybody. Every human being comes into the world single, and God ordains that season to secure an undistracted devotion to the Lord, is what Paul told the Corinthians. That you and I are made not just by God, but for God. We were made for him, that in his presence is fullness of joy, that you will be restless until you rest in him. And so your singleness is about pursuing a devotion to the Lord. Paul says, I forget what's behind and straining towards what's ahead. I reach to the upward call of the surpassing greatness of knowing Christ Jesus, my Lord. You were made to know God, and that relationship is the lead story of your life. So you gotta get that relationship right first. You gotta get a relationship with God right before you'll ever get a relationship with a guy or a girl right. And so we really hammered that last week. I won't do it here first, but you gotta get that relationship right first. But I knew there was tension last week as I said that. In your singleness, it's about devotion to the Lord. You gotta get a relationship with God right before you get a relationship with a guy or a girl right. And I know some people are like, Ben, I'm already pursuing God. So what am I supposed to do? If I'm just pursuing God all day, how will I ever meet somebody? How will I ever go on a date? Well, the way it works is you decide, I'm gonna chase the Lord. And as you make that decision, suddenly you're gonna find there's other people running after him along with you. And some of them will become your best friends. Some of them will be on a team here with you. Some of them will become your mentors. Some of them will be cute. And you're just supposed to go, oh, okay, and run along next to them and be like, you want to run together? Okay, and let's get married. And that's how it works, right? Obviously, there's more to say, but that's generally how it works, all right? So how does this happen? We all make a decision. I'm going to pursue the Lord. Most people want to get married. Most people will get married. But the distance between singleness and marriage is a pathway, and all humanity has gone through this pathway, and our modern pathway is dating. And so if singleness is about devotion, dating is about evaluation. Who am I supposed to run with through the rest of my days, right? Dating exists for evaluation. It's not a status we sit in, it is a process we move through. We will talk more about that next week. But the reality is dating is a process to evaluate, do I want to grip hands with you and run into the forever God has for us? That's the question you're asking in dating. Is this the person I run with for the rest of my days? I don't look into their eyes to make my soul complete. I grab hands with them and run into God's purposes for me. That's what dating is meant to do, right? And so different cultures in different times have gone through that process of evaluation in different ways. Some people, their parents guided that whole process. Other times in history, the church really helped guide that. Nowadays, it's dating, and dating does that. And let me just say, while I'm in the middle of qualifiers too, this isn't gonna be a talk on how to get a date. It's not, because here's the thing, anybody can get a date. Anybody can get married. You set your standards low enough, you can get married tonight, right? So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about how do I meet the right person in the right way? That's more difficult, and that's what's important, and that's what is valuable to us. How do I meet the right person in the right way? So as we talk about dating, it's a process of evaluating. Evaluating what? Is this person the person I'm meant to run with as I chase the purposes of God? That's a who question. What kind of person should I be looking for? What qualities should I value in a human being I run with? You naturally ask the who question. And then you ask the how question. How do I meet that kind of person? What process do I go through? What system do we map out that we can get to know if this is the right person? So when you talk about dating, there's the who question, what qualities should that person possess, and the how question, and how do we discern that about one another that we're meant to run together? And let me just say, the who is more important than the how. You can really mess up the how, but if you end up with the right who, you win, right? If you're pretty good at the how, but you get the wrong who, you lose, okay? Now you need the how, because the how gets you to the who, but we got to start with the who, and that's where we are today. Does that make sense? Now, one last caveat. Some people will look at that and say, well, Ben, the Bible doesn't talk about dating. You're talking about biblical dating. The Bible doesn't talk about dating. And you're right. There's not a verse like, and Moses took Zipporah unto Chili's in order to, that's not there. But the Bible says a lot about evaluation. You see in the book of Proverbs, written to young people, it says, it's better to live on the corner of a roof than in a house shared with a contentious woman. Do you think that was written to a married guy? Hanging from the side of his roof like, oh no, you told me? Like, you think that's what this was? No, this was written to the single guy saying, watch her, evaluate her. Is she always arguing with people? Does she always have some kind of beef with the roommates? Is there always drama? Then I don't know if you want to stack that into your life, bro, because you'll never have peace in your home. So evaluate her life before you make this decision. Or Proverbs 25:28 says, a man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. Ladies, does that guy have a temper? Does he bully his roommates? Is he a jerk? Is he rude to waiters? Then let me tell you something, you'll never feel safe with him. Walls are to protect a city. If that guy is prone to anger and violence and have a short temper, don't enter a home with that man. You will never feel safe. And so you be careful. And so the Bible is filled with texts about evaluation. How do I evaluate this person?